the Christian saint book, you can buy the Muslim one, the Jewish one, but I thought, no, let's have them all together. Okay, what I'm going to do then is pass it round, right? So if you're, so we're on this row, and if you want to start with that one at the end, and then we'll work back, okay? So if you read the first one out.
From here?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure I can read that. Keagia Calliope?
Yes.
Greek educator, 1839-1905.
Right.
Who's
Okay, so she has a name, Calliope, which is a muse. So I was explaining earlier, we're in the Museum of the Muses. These names are still used among Greek girls. And this one was called Calliope. She's the mother of Hercules by tradition, and also, therefore, quite a powerful muse, you know. And so I put her in charge of politics and economics, because you need to be pretty powerful to sort that stuff out. And she's upstairs in the room up there. This woman was a famous educator. They wanted to get Greek independence through knowledge. It's not that they hated the Turks or anything, they just were frustrated at having their own culture not respected enough. So to be a revolutionary in Greece at that time meant to be a teacher, an educator. Their language they were sharing, and they set up schools and stuff. And this woman, I think, set up a school in Athens for women, you know, and was a very great educator, teacher of teachers. Okay, you do the next one as well.
the next one?
Yeah.
Guyot Desherbes. 1745-1828, Claude-Antoine Guyot Desherbes is the son of Prudent Nicolas Guyot Desherbes, squire, advisor, and prosecutor to the king of the city of Joinville, and ordinary controller of its war.
Keep going.
End of Catherine Guérin de la Roche-Paillet, a lawyer in the Paris Parliament. He came to plead in Paris and had some success there. Against Chancellor Maupeou, he wrote a piece of verse, Les Chancelières, which could only be circulated secretly. Appointed judge at the Paris Civil Court in 1790, he became head of division at the Ministry of Justice under Merlin de Douai. On the 24th Terminal Year 6, he was elected deputy for the Seine to the Council of 500, took his place on the right, and became secretary of the council. After the coup d'etat of 18 Brumaire, he was chosen by the Conservative Senate on 4, I don't know how to read this one, niveaus?
Yeah, that's the French Revolutionary calendar. The niveaus was the time of mist.
As deputy for the Seine in the new legislative body. He retired to Le Mans after the legislature and then devoted himself to the culture of letters. He is the father-in-law of Victor Donatien de Musset-Paté and the grandfather of Alfred de Musset and Paul de Musset.
Oh, Alfred de Musset, the poet.
Yeah.
Who had an affair with George Sand, who lived up the road in Nohant. Well, he's a Freemason, so that column that you're reading out, this is for Franc-Maçon. And he's typical. He was a legal thinker, jurist, friend of Napoleon, who was also a Freemason. And the whole Napoleonic Empire was full of, you know, radical conservatives, we could call them, I don't know. Republicans who accepted an emperor. Sort of paradoxical. But they thought that you needed solidity and to safeguard freedom. So they wanted an emperor to do that. And they liked their rituals and their Freemasonic stuff. And they still do here in France. It's quite a popular thing. Most, you know, officials in the system are some kind of Freemason, I think. I'm not sure they fully understand the spiritual depths of it, however. One of my heroes, he's not today, I don't think, but is Louis-Claude de Saint-Martin. I don't know if you've heard of him. He was called also the unknown philosopher. And he studied Freemasonry, he met leading Masons, became an initiate and all that. But then he felt they're just doing the rituals, they don't understand what it means. And he wrote a whole deep series of books about philosophy. And he didn't ever reach power, he had no status, he was never like the head of a parliament or anything. Just the unknown philosopher. Only a few people had ever heard of him, but he was one of the greatest thinkers of the day. And he tried to kind of explain what the revolutionary thing was all about, metaphysically, and where it should go next. Anyway.
So, this column is
Yeah.
for the saints of the franc-maçonnerie?
Oui, c'est les saints, les sages, c'est les saints et les sages.
The ones.
Okay. Do you want to pass the book on?
Yeah,
and,
go ahead.
Amel can do the third and fourth columns. Exciting.
Adam Weishaupt, 1748 to 1822.
Okay. Well, we had him a couple of days ago, didn't we? Adam Weishaupt. But he's come up again in the Esoteric column. C'est le même homme.
Ah, Weishaupt.
So he founded an order of Freemasons. He was himself a philosophy professor at Ingolstadt in Bavaria. He was on the radical left of Bavarian politics. Bavaria is interesting. It was an independent country at the time. It wasn't part of Germany, and it was Catholic. But a lot of people wanted to be like, you know, let's get with the modern age people. And one of my heroes of that time was old man Feuerbach. Feuerbach was the guy that abolished torture in the Bavarian legal system. Up till then, it was still legal. If you were accused of something, they'd torture you to find out whether it's true or not. He'd studied Beccaria, an Italian jurist who'd abolished torture in Italy, and he did the same in Bavaria. And his son, Ludwig Feuerbach, became one of the great philosophers of Germany that inspired Karl Marx. Most people don't know that Feuerbach elder did this for Bavaria, right? So I think Bavaria is quite interesting if you study it intellectually. Now, I don't know if Adam Weishaupt knew old man Feuerbach, probably, because they were both progressives. What Weishaupt thought is that there needs to be like a secret order, a secret society of Freemasons, like not Freemasons, but he called them illuminists, illuminated ones, Enlightenment, you know, people. And he invented quite a complicated system with grades and degrees and stuff. And it didn't really take on. I think there were a few hundred members scattered around. But it became a kind of symbolic thing for the extreme conservative right-wing people to attack. Because fundamentally they didn't want enlightenment. They didn't want people, you know, exploring the mysteries. They didn't want people actually experiencing philosophy. You know, let them read a bit and write a few essays, that's enough. Because the whole conservative worldview depended on a very hierarchical pyramid type thing, where only the top people, the aristocrats with the money and the power, are entitled to have this stuff. Whereas Weishaupt wanted everybody, you know, to have access to education, learning. And he did inspire, he was in correspondence with some of the French philosophers. It'd be interesting to know more about his biography in a non-polemical way. You know. There was a dreadful English scholar called Nestor Webster on the right wing of politics. He wrote, "Oh, they're all dreadful, we hate Weishaupt, he's dreadful," type books, conspiracy stuff. But I'd love to see a proper study of Weishaupt's work. I don't know that one's been written. You do the next one as well, because...
Nice turn.
Dayaldas, 1783 to 1855. Founder of the Sikh reform movement, which emphasized Nirankar reliance on the divine will. what is Niranka reliance on the divine will?
Is that all there is?
Oh, excuse me.
Thank you. I think it means surrendering to the divine will. It's a form of Sikhism. And that one should... So there's nothing we can do to improve things,
No.
but we can plug into the divine and we can receive a download on what we can do. So he was a modern day Sikh, Dayal Das. Das means servant, so Ram Das means a servant of God. He was the name chosen by one of the psychedelic frontier people who's still alive. Yeah, I wish this column is for esoteric thinkers. Yeah. Okay, the next one is Jimmu, the Emperor of Japan, the founder of the Japanese emperors, the first emperor of Japan. And so he's very important in the Shinto tradition. He's supposed to be the grandson of the goddess of the sun, Amaterasu. And in the Shinto religion, his genealogy is given. And of course, so when we talk about eclectic goddess worship, I mean the Japanese are included in that, ultimately. And the Shinto religion is very full of it, you know. So he's quite important, and yeah. And then we have, the next one is our Jewish thinker of the day, is Hans Morgenthau, 1904 to 1980, a Jewish political philosopher, quite famous if you study political science. That's sort of real. He'd be on the realist side of politics. You know, it's about power and wealth, and too much idealism won't get you power and wealth. Sort of school of thought. I'm more on the idealist wing myself. I think it's better to be poor and virtuous than rich and evil. You know.
We have to Habib Ajni.
Any dates?
724. 724.
Quite early on then. Yeah. Yes, a Sufi. I don't know the details. I wish that there were more hours in the day and I could fill all the columns in detail. I do my best, you know.
The next one is Joseph Huppé de Fevy.
Huppé de Favia, yes.
Fevia.
Is that all it says?
That's all it says.
Well, I know about him. He was a French philosopher in the time of the Revolution. He was a visionary genius. He wrote a science fiction book about what the world will be like 300 years from now. He believed in equality, liberty, and fraternity. He was a fan of Pythagoras. He was a typical French esoteric philosophe who was, amazing. I discovered about him and others like him when I read a very important book by a man called James Billington, who was the Librarian of Congress in America for many years, which is the single most incredible library on the planet, I think, apart from the Vatican. And James wrote a book called Fire in the Minds of Men, The Origins of the Revolutionary Faith. And he traced back to France, revolutionary France, all these intellectuals who were revolutionaries because they were thinking new types of thoughts. Scientists, economists, philosophers, and science fiction writers, you know, novelists and stuff. And he gave all their esoteric stuff, and that's when I discovered the importance of Freemasonry to these currents of thought. It was their way of coming together and sharing ideas. And this man, James Billington, who's dead now, he was amazing. And he then traces that on, and that inspired me to think, this is the esoteric origin of Marxism and left-wing thought. it's the unwritten history. It didn't begin as an atheist thing, which it became later. It began as a spiritual reform movement against the dogmas of the church. They wanted a new form of Christianity that would be lived. And Saint-Simon was one of them. So James Bullington goes into all this stuff. Saint-Simon wrote a book called New Christianity. And this guy was doing the same stuff.
About the American Revolution. In God we trust, but there is no religion.
Well, they were all Freemasons, the American revolutionaries, and Ben Franklin, and it was connected with the French Revolution. There was a direct transmission because Ben Franklin, who was a Freemason in America, as was George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, they were all in touch with France and the illuminated circles here, people like Huppé de Favia and others. And there was this Lodge of the Nine Sisters created in Paris, which most of them belonged to. And Ben Franklin became the Grand Master of it. So, the American Revolution, it was a revolution of ideas too. Ben Franklin discovered electricity, how it works. He was an inventor. He discovered negative and positive aspects to electricity. Tom Paine, again, went from Paris to America, taking these ideas of... so they were advanced thinkers in sciences, but also in politics, because they said we need a new form of social organisation that draws on the good of everybody, brings out their maximum, and that nobody gets oppressed. That was the idea behind the American Constitution. And that was the idea behind the French revolutionary ideas, which came a bit later. But it's the same crowd behind the scenes for doing it. And there were women lodges, there were women Freemasons in France, and women revolutionaries in America were very important as well. So it's a fascinating period of history to study, which I've done in some detail.
Yeah.
I wish it was better known.
and I was listening to that story. It seems that France and the US are like sisters or brothers.
Yeah, we are.
Yes,
Fraternal.
but
Yes.
my question is, what about the UK in the story?
Okay, that's a really brilliant question. Just to finish off the French-American link, so the great sculptor Bertoldi created the Statue of Liberty as a symbolic goddess, going back to the goddess worship, right? It's the goddess of liberty holding a torch with Athena's kind of rays of light coming out, and the French gifted it to America in the 1880s as a symbol of the love between France and America. And Bertoldi was a Freemason, of course. The other great statue he did was the statue of Vercingetorix, the great Gaulish druid leader, and it's in the town square in Clermont-Ferrand. I've got a photo of me in front of it, soon after I moved to France. So yes, that link, and what I'm proposing is that now the French people should gift the Americans a nonagon, a 9-sided building to sit on top of the Pentagon. As a next gesture, we love you, America, but we don't like your Pentagon. It's doing too much war and wasting everyone's money. So we're going to give you a 9-sided building to go on top to house your Department of Peace. This is the new gift from the French people to, and I've got a project called the Leonardo da Vinci Peace Prize, which will award the gift to the best architects who can design it. So that's a sort of architectural competition. And it came to me from going to Leonardo da Vinci's tomb here in Amboise. Okay, so what are the British doing? Well, yes, the British, oh dear, the British, I love them. I mean, I'm British, I've got British parents, But they don't really do intellectual stuff very much. They're plodders who do science. And they invented this with this Baconian method of doing empirical science. They tried to chuck out all metaphysics and philosophy as airy-fairy nonsense. So if you want to get on in the English academic world, you have to be an empirical scientist. And you get loads of funding to research how many atoms are there in this little molecule that's doing that or something, right?
It makes me think of that God.
Sort of. It's kind of Hephaestus when he's in a really boring mode. And all that knowledge is used for weapons. British are very good at weapons and war. But sometimes there come along geniuses who do the bigger stuff, like proper philosophy. And, you know, they include people that are trying to find the absolute truth. But they're few and far between in the history of the English mind. I've got a great book upstairs by Emerson, who was an American philosopher, a proper one, a real one. He visited England to find out where are the philosophers. And he wrote this book about the English character. And he said what I've just said. He said they're all just into business, finance, money, economics, inventions. They're good at steam engines, but they don't do thinking. And he went to interview a few of the poets. Carlyle was the closest he found to a proper intellectual in Britain, who was Scottish anyway. So the British do Freemasonry, but they've sort of abolished thinking. When I talk to my Freemasonic friends in England, it's like a sort of club that you can get on. They're doing it for the wrong reason. They're not doing it because they want their pan-sophists who want to find ultimate truth. They're doing it because they want to join the club that, you know, has got a lot of power and influence. And that's the wrong reason. And then they made a big stand against the revolution and never understood it. They didn't understand Napoleon. If only they talked about ideas and values and meaning, all those wars could have been avoided, in my opinion. On the peace swing, I don't think France and England, we should have fought these huge wars, the Napoleonic Wars. We should have just invited Napoleon to come and give a lecture in London about Freemasonry and spirituality and values. He would have probably come, and it would have all been fun. Because the people that opposed him were also Freemasons. Wellington and Nelson were also, you know. So there shouldn't have been any fighting. We should have been. But I think Britain, with this new election, and the Tory party was the bulwark of keeping ideas out of Britain. They didn't like liberty, equality, and fraternity. They wanted liberty on our terms, for us, but not for you. Only a bit of equality, no, the slaves don't have any. And fraternity, well, only for the club, you know. And so they wanted to keep out these revolutionary ideas. But it's the walls are crumbling, and at this next election on July the 4th, they're going to lose power. But look how long it's taken. Like, blimey. Okay, next one. That was fun.
Next one, Hartshorn Charles. 1897-2000.
Right, he is a philosopher, American. I regard him as one of the greatest of American philosophers in the 20th century. Have you heard of him, either of you? Charles Hartshorn. He was a teacher in American academia, and he was what's called a process philosopher. So he took the view that God is a verb, not a noun. He followed the teachings of Whitehead, who was a great philosopher from Cambridge, who settled in Harvard, and had been a friend of Bertrand Russell, and was an idealist like me. He believed there is a God behind it all, there's a divine intelligence, but it's not a fixed thing, it's not a static thing. It's like a fire that's constantly changing and flickering, and we can plug into it at different stages of its evolution. God himself, herself, is in evolution, the goddess, you know. And so Charles Hartshorn invented the phrase panentheism. He's associated with this term, which is different to pantheism. Pantheism, which no doubt you've heard of, means what? Pantheism.
Many gods?
No, that's polytheism.
Ah, panthéisme en français.
C'est quoi? everything is God. Pan is everything. So everything is God. The table, the candle, you, me, the air, the cat. And pantheism became a big thing in the sort of 16th, 17th century.
I didn't know about that.
Spinoza popularised it. It's a philosophical term to mean everything is God. And what Hartshorne did is he said slightly differently, he said, no, that's not good enough because that leads to materialism. If you're a pantheist and everything is God, then you end up being a kind of materialist and you believe you can explain everything through matter. He said, it's not, God is bigger than that. So panentheism means everything is in God. God is like the big emptiness of the universe, the giant vastness of space, which our telescopes can't find the end of. All of that is theos. And we are having little lives in amongst the middle of that theos. So panentheism was Hartshorne's way of trying to talk about. He's a scientist. He believes in physics and chemistry and mathematics, but it's all sort of God at play. Anyway, he was a great thinker, and he deserves to have his entry in the calendar.
We're all cells in the body of God.
Effectively, yeah. We don't yet know the size and full immensity of it. We're just exploring and discovering. Yeah. And like a baby, when a brain is still evolving, it makes new neuron connections in the mind, up till about the age of 18, all our brains are evolving. And we're like that,
You mean neurogenesis?
I'm not sure what the term is, the sort of flexibility of cells of the brain in the evolutionary stage. They're still making these synapses and connections. I'm not sure what the term is scientifically for that.
Because I think now they found out it continues after that stage, for so long we've believed.
If you're lucky, if you keep the old synapses working, yes.
Yeah, and if you have enough sleep and eat well and so many things. But yeah, there is
There's
neurons
Yeah.
being created
Yes.
throughout our lives.
Come to the philosophy club and you get fired up with some new synapses. That's the point of it. Yeah, and when I read a new book or something, I get very excited. I think that's going on physically.
At least information is coming and going somewhere.
I mean, I'm quite interested in neurology and how the brain works, and it's a bit of a mystery. But Hartshorne was a great thinker. Okay, who's the next one?
Mahadeva, a famous astrologer. That's all it is.
Is that all it says?
Yes, so it says.
I need an editor. Yeah. Anyway, he's in the Hindu column, right? Mahadeva.
I don't know what.
The third
it's
from the
called.
end.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the Hindu. So when I get my editor turn up with 6 months to spare, we can fill in all the details. Thank you.
You want to read on?
Pass it on. I mean, this is the third edition of the book. It's better each time,
So the second one is from Thailand.
Okay.
Mood Ajahn Framun Buryadatta Thera, 1870 to 1949. Meditation master of the Thai forest tradition. Born into Kankyu family in Ubol, Rajahani, northeast Thailand. Took Samanera ordination in Kongsberg at age 15. Disrobed after 2 years for family reasons, but returned to robe at age 22, taking bhikkhu ordination at Wat Liab. Afterwards, trained with Fra Ajahn Sao Kantisilo of Wat Liab.
You're doing well, it's great.
Under his guidance, the ascetic forest tradition became a very important tradition in the revival of Buddhist meditation practice. The vast majority of recently deceased and presently living meditation masters in Thailand are either direct disciples of 3 points or were substantially influenced by his teaching. Ah, the last one is for you.
Okay. So, yeah, the Thai meditation in the Buddhist tradition is really interesting. When I lived in Sussex for a year, in my second round, because it's brought up in Sussex largely, I lived at Chithurst, and there's a Buddhist monastery there, which was founded by people inspired by these Thai Buddhist teachers. So it's Theravada Buddhism, and it goes back to the first generations of Buddhist teachings, and it's about mind consciousness, watching thought, watching the mind, in a very disciplined way. And I respect them. They're great people. Okay, then we have our Christian saints of the day. We have Joseph Cafasso, Mary of Ugnish, Etheldrada, who is an Anglo-Saxon saint, who had a church in the East End of London, well, the City of London actually, which is a centre for interfaith prayer, research, reflection. It's an Anglican church, but it's got a tent in the garden where they do interfaith stuff. Keinberg, who was another Anglo-Saxon, I think. And then we got John Paul the 23rd, the Pope, who was an important figure. So, yes, I think the Christian saints are all, there's always a crop of them each day, and one can respect them for their witness. One would hope that they wouldn't be too annoyed if people want to dive deep into the mysteries and find the essence behind the dogmas and the teachings. And so I think there's a what I call a meta-Catholic position, which is, because the word Catholic means universal, and I think a truly Catholic thinker now has to take account of all the periodic table. I don't see Catholicism as just, well, it's my box is best. That's an old style of Catholicism, which was outmoded at the time of the Vatican Second Council. I met a cardinal who'd been at the Vatican Council from India, Archbishop Angelo Fernandez, who was helping organise the radical wing of Vatican II. And they were saying that we've got to get away from that old idea that we're saved and you're all damned and going to hell. That's not what I think is true Christianity. And I don't think it's true Catholicism because it's not borne out in the universal wisdom teachings of humanity. There's wisdom in all of them. And so now I think we need to redefine what is a Catholic in the Christian context. Is somebody that's looking for the universal within all the faiths and finding the good news at the heart of them all, which is the point of the table. And I love the Vatican Library, so may all the scholars there do this, get with this new definition of Catholicism and live up to it. Okay, well there we are. Any final comments before we finish? We've had a good old session here, and our gods, I think, are happy. You're happy?
Yeah.
Any final thoughts? Okay.
No.
No? Okay. I'm going to